Hey, what's going on, guys? It is day 5, which means it is Friday. A wonderful day. It is October 21st, 2011, if you couldn't see this little dealie down here. So I actually wrote down some things to talk about this time because I am organized. But as far as the game goes, I had to do some math, and when I say some math, I mean a ton of math, because I'll show you an example of the current user interface system here in a second, but you'll see. I had to get where a person's thumb was, so let's say the touch input, and then take the, I kind of explained this the other day, but then find out the angle between the anchor point and that, and then line up the little joystick piece along that, at that line, at a fixed hypotenuse away from, or at a fixed radius, I should say, away from the anchor point. So that was kind of irritating. Well, let me kind of just tell you what I did. Is I had written all the code as I had known it, as I had thought it would work. That's what all my math had taught me. I was really confused why it hadn't worked, because I thought it would work. But then what I did is I just deleted all that code and I went ahead and wrote it down in my notebook, because I think a lot of the times our brain, mostly because we spend, 12 years doing math by hand and by writing with pen and paper, so I went ahead and did it all on the paper, and then I just typed it up because it was already kind of in Objective-C syntax anyways, which is kind of weird to write that, but I mean write it as in pen and paper. But and then it worked out, so that was good. So I also had tried nesting too many of the functions inside of each other, which just confused things, and when I actually slowed down and made a variable for each one, it kind of helped me visualize what was actually going on, and then I could even just nest it after I had done that. So my two big words of advice is don't be afraid to do things line by line. Try to, if something's not working and just your base logic is off, not that it's a bug, you just have to sit and think through something, don't be afraid to do it line by line. Not everything has to be nested inside different methods and functions. And then the other thing is write it out on pen and paper, especially if it's math, because your brain is trained to write most of the time, to do math on pen and paper, so that can help out a ton. Next thing is I got the side-to-side buttons working. Pretty straightforward. That wasn't too bad. Yeah, so the multi-touch interface was, it's kind of a weird story. I had originally done it once again as my brain thought it would work, and then when it didn't work, I was confused. But what had happened is I had not set up the so Cocos 2D sets up a OpenGL view for you, and I had not set that to receive multi-touch inputs, so I had to go back and do that, and I thought it was going to be way more complicated after I started reading how to do it, and then I did that and it ended up working. So I kind of wanted to talk about that, but that's more of a longer, deeper topic, is that when I do things that don't, and if I can't immediately explain them, I feel as though I'm relying too much on the framework than my actual knowledge. But then again, I think it's a huge part of the learning process is to do things trial and error rather than knowing exactly how it's going to work the first time you do it. But that's a total tangent, and I'll put that in my notes to talk about at a later date. But yeah, so if you didn't know, the simulator I've been using obviously does not receive multi-touch inputs because you control it with your mouse, and you click to simulate a touch being pushed and held and moved and released. But I actually got it deployed to my iPhone. And if you think, or if you're wondering how that works, that is what you have to buy. That's kind of the first step in the development process, that you actually need to be enrolled in the developer program, and it's $99 a year for iOS, it's $99 a year for Mac, and then the Safari one is free, so I said, why not? I might as well get the Safari one. I don't think I'll do anything with it, but it does allow you to use your iPhone or iPad as your build target. So when all you really have to do is let me open up Xcode here so I don't say the wrong thing. But if you're familiar with Xcode, you see up in the top next to in Xcode 4, next to the run and stop buttons, right to the right of those, the big scheme drop down menu. Yeah, so on yours where it says scheme, it'll probably say iPad 5.0 simulator, iPhone 5.0 simulator, and then when you plug in your phone, it will come up as the name of your phone. So mine is Clay's Telly, and that comes up. And right now, because it's not plugged in, it just says iOS device, which is kind of interesting. But once you do that, and you can actually deploy it and then unplug it and take it, and I guess that's pretty vital for testing apps that would have GPS integration, but I did not know at first that you didn't have to be constantly plugged in. So that's what it looks like thus far. I'll kind of walk through what all the buttons do. The graphics I know are terrible, and I'm going to do some of the artwork later after I set up all the logic and functionality of the game. So, ooh, that is a really bad glare. Alright, so let's see if I can show you this. It's backwards to me, but so this one, so yeah, this is what I was talking about with the radius, how it kind of simulates a joystick even though my finger's up here. It could be directly on this, and this is really hard to control because I'm behind it and looking at it in the reflection of the camera, but that's how that works. And that actually moves your player's reticle. And then this down here, you have your go left and right. I think I'm going to increase the speed that goes. And then you have your bullets that come out, and they actually are little images of bullets. And right now what the problem I'm working through is that when I hold it down, because it's running at, you can see down there about 60 frames a second, that's actually 60 bullets per second that are coming out as I hold down the button, because the way I set up the logic, I had wanted it to be able for you to be able to hold it down and have the bullets come out, but I did not want them to go that fast, so I need to change that. And you can actually be moving this while firing bullets, and they'll, oh, yeah. But eventually there's going to be zombies that come down from the top and try to eat your brains, and you're going to want to shoot them. So that's what that's all about. Yes, there's a little bit more functionality I need to add to the bullet so that you can hold it down and it'll fire. Probably it'll have different rates for different guns so that you can just hold it down and a pistol might shoot once or maybe twice a second, and then a machine gun might shoot it 30 times a second, or etc. Okay, but as I said, because I couldn't simulate multi-touch on the iOS simulator on the computer, I had to just kind of I would look through my logic and say, yes, this would support multi-touch, and I didn't. Without testing it, I hadn't realized that it didn't. So once I tested it, I had realized it didn't. And the main point of this giant tangent is that the way I figured out the multi-touch, how to implement the multi-touch, is that I had Googled it, and then it went onto the Cocos 2D forums, and then I had found that all this sample code was actually included in the Cocos 2D package. So I started looking through that, and I deployed some of those sample projects to my iPhone and was playing around with them, and that's how I discovered that. That was how I discovered how to turn on multi-touch in that OpenGL view. But basically, what I mean to say is that the sample code for things like this is super important, and it's always worth a look, even if you don't find reading through the code all that interesting, and if you can't follow it, it's really good to just sit there and sort through, and you'll get familiar with certain methods or ways of doing things, because sometimes programmers or frameworks like this have odd ways of doing certain things that you wouldn't have initially thought, but then once you see it, you might be able to say, oh, I can see why they did that, and I can see why I should do that. Not that you should copy them or that you should plagiarize them or anything, but it's always good to read through someone's code that is obviously way better than you. And I don't know who wrote the sample code. It might have even been the guy who created the framework. So he obviously knows what he's talking about. But that's about it for the game itself. I had a few hours to work on it last night, and I had a few hours this morning, and then I came home at lunch and started working on it, but then I had to go back to school. Other than that, in my real life, I have the ACT tomorrow, which I'm trying not to stress about. I am definitely going to practice again tonight, which normally just means I'm going to sit through one of the practice tests. And I normally do chunks of, I do sections of half, I do half the questions in half the time because I just think it's overbearingly painful to do the whole thing. Not that I can't sit and work for multiple hours, but normally on standardized tests, I just don't find it intriguing. So it doesn't feel as intellectually challenging. I guess I could say to sound really pseudo sophisticated, but point being, I have the ACT tomorrow. That was a way too long of a tangent. Tomorrow's Saturday. I think I'm going to do the tutorial on the logic behind the touch input, the joystick style touch input, because it's kind of more complex than I had originally thought, so it might be kind of cool to see that. But that brings me to our cue of the day, is what do you think would be cool for the tutorial tomorrow on Saturday? I mean, because that's what I was thinking of doing. I don't know if that'd be helpful to anyone. If you want to see how to just download and install the Cocos 2D framework as a whole, if you want to see just how to get started on a game or project, or it could be something completely unrelated to Cocos 2D or Objective-C. I don't know, but leave a comment if there's anything you wanted to learn about after hearing what I've been working on and after seeing this little prototype, I guess you could say. Oh, one last little thing that was kind of cool we did today in aerospace engineering class is we actually, on Flight Simulator, we took off. If you're familiar with Idaho at all, you'll know what I'm talking about. But we took off at the Boise airport and flew all the way to McCall, which took me about 40 minutes. Some of the kids didn't finish because the class was over, and it was funny. But I don't know how long it takes in real life, but I assume that's pretty accurate. We were only going, because we were flying a Cessna 172, so the max airspeed, it was like 120 nautical miles an hour, and the flight was I think 80 nautical miles. I don't know. I don't even know why they use nautical miles. I should Google that. But that was just kind of fun little simulation, because it felt really real, because that was the route that I'm not familiar with the flying route, but I'm familiar with the driving route, and it was just cool to see the flight path that you would take. And we did it all with the simulated instruments, and it was actually very realistic how we did it. I'm not saying I could go out and fly the plane, but I could at least control the instruments that would navigate us there. So yeah, that's all I really had to say on this wonderful Friday, October 21st. Let me know if you guys have any ideas for tutorials. If not, I'm going to talk about trigonometry, and that's about it. I'll talk to you later.